We Muslims always say that our religion is a religion of moderation. Now, why are Muslims endorsing and tolerating an extreme position within our religious practice? And that's something that bothers me. And as far as this lady being denied education, I don't think that that's true. I think that every student has to comply with certain regulations. When we enter public spaces, we have to comply with the norms of that public space. And children at school are also not supposed to be wearing certain types of clothes, and they're not supposed to be wearing T-shirts with certain inscriptions and all. And if they violate those rules, well, they're sent home. And to me, this is a parallel situation. So it's not a question of this woman being denied education. No one is denying her education. However, when she is in a public space, she has to comply with regulations.
May I interrupt a second, ma'am? That's why I don't want to go into details. She was accepted in both schools with her niqab. So she did not violate anything, because the matter why they accepted her in the first place.
But it is the details that are
Because
if the men in the class who are also immigrants to Quebec, who have a right to learn the language they're going to be living in, if they have to do anything different to accommodate...
Let's face it. All over Canada, it's not only in Quebec, we have some women with niqab. Mm-hmm. We never heard of people failing in their classes. I mean, we heard it only in Quebec. If it is a pedagogical issue, let's keep it as a pedagogical issue. Let's not use it media-wise, politicians, everyone is getting involved. Because I was a director
It's not really a pedagogical issue. Aren't we really talking about accommodation? It's how we will accommodate what others are coming into our society bringing and what they want.
Let me tell you.
Abby, you want to jump in?
Can I jump in? I think it's actually both a pedagogical issue as well as how we're going to deal with accepting others from other religions and cultures into our society, in terms of there are limits to reasonable accommodation. There are limits to what institutions and people in positions of power should do in order to accommodate different people's preferences. But at the same time, those should be concretely related to either the operations of the institution or limits in resources, financial or human resources.
Do we need a higher court ruling?
Obviously, in this case, there is going to be one. The Human Rights Commission is going to rule on it. But for the most part, these things get worked out on an individual basis. They're extremely contextual, which is why it makes it very, very hard to, in the absence of agreed upon facts, the details, to pronounce whether this was reasonable, unreasonable. Should she have been accommodated? Should she not have been accommodated?
Just let me remind our listeners that today we're discussing freedom of religion, accommodation, and resolving differences that arise when individual rights conflict with societal values. And joining me to discuss the issues are Farzana Hassan, a past president of the Muslim Canadian Congress, Abby Deshman, a lawyer and project director of the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. They're both in Toronto. And here in Montreal, Samar Majzoub, president of the Canadian Muslim Forum. Mr. Majzoub, do you think we need a ruling on this?
On a personal level, I don't prefer this. I really prefer to have a deep intellectual. And when I mean intellectual, we need specialist, intellectual people sitting down and trying to solve.
And do you not see that happening?
So far, no. I'm really, and this is what is really bothering us as a community. Again, we are not here to defend one person or the other. We are not here to say niqab is an obligation in Islam or not. Is not my role. I'm not a person that in this territory. I'm here to say this matter has to be solved in a very harmonious way. Today, again, we're having another problem with the daycares, and this time it is Jewish and Muslims, and the Jewish Congress had get involved, reacting very angrily. So this whole issue, it has to do how much we are ready to accept the other. Statistic Canada, I don't know if you have the chance to read their report, just went out lately. I think a couple of these. They predict in a few years to come Toronto, 65% of the people, of the citizens of Toronto, will be what we call visible minority.
But we are discussing it now. Isn't this what we need to do?
Honestly, this is what I appreciate of today's radio, because I have shied away recently from any more commenting on this. Today I was with Anna Maria Tremonti, and today I am with you just for this, because I know the names. I know they are very respectful names. They are very well-educated names. I'm not here with people that will start, shouting and screaming and saying, this is my country, this is my values. That's why as a Canadian Muslim Forum, we are participating today in this discussion.
Farzana Hassan, what do you think of the discussion? Is this what we need to be doing?
Well, my organization has actually, called for a burqa ban, limiting, the burqa in public. And the reason for that is that I personally and members of my organization are concerned about the proliferation of the burqa in Canadian society. And I'm saying that because, this very, very conservative, puritanical brand of Islam is being propagated and preached here in Canada. There are schools here. I'm not saying that this is the extremist view. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that terrorism is being preached here through these schools. However, a very puritanical Wahhabi-style Islam is being preached here in Canada, which calls for women to cover their faces and cover up entirely. And to me, this has societal implications. If we allow a certain view to proliferate in society, then obviously it has societal implications. And what we're going to see is the marginalization of a whole lot of Muslim women. And I say that because a woman in a niqab or a woman in a burqa is not going to get a job as a teller in the bank, or she's not going to get a job as a school bus driver. And is that the kind of society we want to endorse?
But isn't that woman's choice then? If she wants to wear a niqab and realizes her choices will be limited as a result?
This whole debate about choices is just too narrowly focused on the choices of a few women, and I've always said that. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't think that these choices are all that genuine and authentic, because these women have only been exposed to a certain narrative. You cannot make a choice when you've been only exposed to one type of narrative. A choice is a choice only among choices. And that's my whole gripe with this whole argument about choices here. And as far as the choices are concerned, what about the choices of the women who are being coerced into wearing the burqa? And there are a number of women who are being coerced into it, and we don't have any legislation whatsoever protecting them.
Can I jump in here
for
a second? I think it's important not to overgeneralize or jump to generalizations when you're talking about women and their motivations for wearing any form of dress. If women are being forced to wear a burqa, absolutely, that's an enormous problem. The countries that force women to wear burqas, it's highly objectionable. I would find it equally...
What are we going to do about that? Do we have a legislation protecting these women? That's
just one second, Samira. Abby, you want to finish that thought?
Yeah, sure. I was just going to follow up with that. The other side is I would find it equally objectionable for a government to dictate what I should not wear or what I have to take off. Any piece of clothing, for the government to tell me I cannot wear something is highly invasive of my personal choice, never mind whether it's based on religious beliefs or not.
Okay, we're running out of time here. Samir, I'll give you a final word.
I'm really, to tell you, shocked and surprised to hear that someone, originally from outside Canada, to ask to have a law prohibiting people from a dress code. This is beyond the imagination of anyone that coming new to Canada. We are against countries who impose on women certain dress code. And here I am again imposing on women certain dress code. And this is unbelievable that we call for this in a democratic and a free country as Canada. This is my underlining. We should limit discussion to intellectuals on this issue. We should not use it publicly. We should not use it politically speaking. At the same time, we should use it as a platform to attack Muslims and Canadian Muslims and their culture. And we are not here to impose on anyone any doctrine. That's what I mean.
Well, the discussion will obviously continue, and I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
I was speaking with Farzana Hassan. She's a past president of the Muslim Canadian Congress and an author who writes about women and Islam. Abby Deshman is a lawyer and project director with the Canadian Civil Liberties Association in Toronto, and Samir Majzoub, president of the Canadian Muslim Forum. What do you think of the debate? Was it appropriate for the student to be asked to leave the classroom? Drop us a line with your thoughts via email. We're at thelink@rcinet.ca. No, that's thelink@rcinet.ca.